The atmosphere was still electric even after the final rally ended. The sound of sneakers squeaking against the court had faded. The cheers from the small crowd upstairs were slowly dissolving into excited chatter, and the intense energy of the game seemed to linger in the air like a heartbeat refusing to calm down. It was supposed to be just another friendly tennis match, a casual moment meant for fun, laughter, and maybe a bit of competition. But no one, absolutely no one, expected what would happen next. As the players made their way back to the locker room, there was already a noticeable shift in mood. What had started as a competitive match quickly turned into a moment filled with something deeper, something that fans would later describe as unexpectedly emotional and completely unforgettable. Among them, Jinkok stood out, still catching his breath, his damp shirt clinging to his body, and his arm muscles tense from the game. He looked different, not tired, not defeated, but thoughtful. The locker room door closed behind them, shutting out the noise from the outside world. Inside, the atmosphere was completely different. It was quieter, more personal. The wooden lockers lined the walls, tennis rackets leaned casually against benches, and water bottles sat half empty on the table. It was the kind of place where masks usually come off, where the public persona fades and real emotions take over. At first, everything seemed normal. There were laughs, light teasing. Someone joked about a missed shot. Another replayed a moment from a game, and the room filled with the kind of laughter that only comes after shared effort. Jinkok sat down, leaning slightly forward, his hands clasped together, as if he was about to say something, but didn't. Not yet. Then something changed. It started subtly. Ji noticed it first. Sitting beside him, he glanced at Jinkok with a soft smile, but his expression slowly shifted as he realized something was off. Jinkok wasn't laughing anymore. His eyes weren't focused on the conversation. Instead, he seemed lost in thought, like he was somewhere else entirely. "Hey, you okay?" someone asked casually. Jinkok didn't answer immediately. And that silence, that brief, unexpected silence, was enough to make the entire room pause. Because Jinkok wasn't someone who stayed quiet for no reason. He finally looked up, and when he did, everything changed. What happened next was something no one could have predicted. Without warning, Jinkok stood up and walked straight toward Jean. There was no hesitation in his steps, no sign of uncertainty. And before anyone could even process what was happening, he pulled Jean into a tight, sudden embrace. The room froze. For a split second, no one moved. No one spoke. It wasn't just a casual hug. It was firm, emotional, real. Jin's eyes widened in surprise at first, clearly caught off guard. But then, slowly, his expression softened. He let out a small laugh. Not because it was funny, but because he understood. He wrapped his arms around Jinkok in return, patting his back gently, as if to say, "It's okay. I'm here." And just like that, the mood in the room shifted completely. The others couldn't help but react. Some burst into laughter, surprised by the sudden moment. Others smiled warmly, watching the interaction unfold with a sense of quiet understanding. It was unexpected, yes, but it was also deeply genuine. "What is this?" someone joked from the side, trying to lighten the moment. But even through the laughter, there was something undeniable about what had just happened. It wasn't staged. It wasn't planned. It was real. Jinkok finally pulled away, his face breaking into a smile, one that looked lighter, freer, as if something had been released. Jean shook his head playfully, still smiling, and nudged him slightly as if to say, "You're unbelievable." But the moment didn't end there. What happened next only made things even more unforgettable. Instead of returning to his seat, Jinkok stayed standing, looking around at everyone in the room. There was a brief pause, as if he was deciding whether to say something or not. And then, with a small laugh, he spoke. "You know," he started, his voice slightly softer than usual. "Today felt different." That was all it took to draw everyone's attention back to him. The room grew quiet again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was intentional. Everyone was listening. He continued, talking about the game, about the energy, about how it reminded him of something more than just a match. His words weren't dramatic, but they carried weight. It wasn't just about tennis anymore. It was about connection, about moments, about being present. And somehow, that simple, unexpected speech made the earlier hug make perfect sense. Because it wasn't random. It was a reaction, a genuine expression of something he felt in that moment. As he finished speaking, the tension in the room dissolved completely. The laughter returned, but it was different now, warmer, more relaxed. Someone clapped jokingly. Another teased him for getting too emotional, and the room quickly filled with playful energy again. But the impact of that moment didn't fade. Not for them, and definitely not for the fans. Because once the photos and clips from the locker room started circulating online, everything exploded. Army couldn't stop talking about it. Did you see that hug? That was so real. I wasn't ready for this today. Loudly crying face. Why does this feel so emotional over a tennis match? The reactions poured in from all over the world. Fans dissected every second of the moment. The way Jinkok walked over, the way Jean reacted, the expressions, the timing, everything. Some called it heartwarming. Others described it as unexpectedly deep, and many simply admitted they couldn't stop replaying it. Because it wasn't just about what happened. It was about what it meant. In an industry where so many moments are polished and planned, this stood out as something different. Something real. Something that reminded everyone why they fell in love with them in the first place. And maybe that's why it hits so hard. Because sometimes the most unforgettable moments aren't the big performances or the perfectly choreographed scenes. Sometimes it's just a quiet locker room, a sudden hug, and a feeling that no one saw coming. The moment should have ended there. A simple hug, a brief emotional exchange, a fleeting scene inside a locker room that would normally fade into memory as quickly as it appeared. But somehow it didn't, because after that unexpected embrace, something deeper began to unfold. Jinkok didn't immediately return to his usual playful self. Even though the room slowly filled with laughter again, even though jokes were thrown around to ease the tension, there was still a lingering feeling in the air. Something unspoken, something that quietly held everyone's attention. He sat back down, but this time, he leaned slightly closer to Jean, as if the conversation between them wasn't finished yet. And maybe it wasn't. Jean glanced at him again, this time with a softer expression. Not confused anymore, not surprised, but understanding. There was a silent exchange between them, one that didn't need words. The kind of communication that only comes from years of shared experiences, late-night talks, struggles, victories, and everything in between. Meanwhile, the others watched with amused curiosity. A burst of laughter followed. Jinkok smiled, shaking his head slightly, but he didn't deny anything. Instead, he leaned back, letting out a deep breath, as if he had just released something heavy from his chest. And that's when things took another unexpected turn. Instead of brushing it off or changing the subject, Jinkok spoke again, but this time, his tone carried something different. It wasn't just casual anymore. It was honest.